What is going on, Jet fans? Matt O'Leary back with a video here on this Saturday, late morning, early afternoon. Excited to get into this one as we will be discussing NFL draft experts predicting the New York Jets' first two draft picks. So fresh off the Senior Bowl, two of my favorite draft analysts, Connor Rogers and Trevor Sikkema, of the NFL Stock Exchange podcast did a 2-round mock draft for the entire league, but this is a New York Jets channel and a New York Jets show. So I wanted to focus on the two picks that they made for the New York Jets because I think they absolutely nailed it, and we'll talk through why. As we know, the New York Jets have the 7th pick in the NFL draft, and coming off the board with the first 6 selections were Cam Ward, Abdul Carter, Shedeur Sanders, Travis Hunter, Mason Graham, and Will Johnson. So in that scenario, what they decided to do for the New York Jets was give them wide receiver Tet McMillan out of Arizona. Now, I really like this pick for the New York Jets, and I feel different, maybe different than some people. I feel like in years gone by, I've had more of a stronger feel that the Jets have to go a certain direction, in the NFL draft, at least positionally. But this year, I don't really feel like that's the case at all for the Jets. I think you can make the case for them to go a bunch of different directions in the first round. Wide receiver, especially Tet McMillan, being one of those guys. So Allen Lazard is going to get cut in the offseason. He is a big outside receiver. We'll get to that in a second. It's not a guarantee that Davante Adams is back, especially if Aaron Rodgers isn't. And if that's the case, then wide receiver quickly becomes a massive need. But even if Davante Adams comes back, are we going to just turn our nose up at the idea of adding Tet McMillan in here and having Davante Adams, Garrett Wilson, and Tet McMillan as your wide receiver core? I wouldn't. You have to develop a young quarterback eventually. Wouldn't you want to put this guy, whoever that next quarterback is, in a position to succeed? How often have we talked about, the Jets, they don't have the right infrastructure for a young quarterback to succeed. That's why they fail. Look at who Sam Darnold was throwing the ball to. Or, Zach Wilson didn't have the proper coaching staff, or whatever excuse you want to come up for these guys. Well, you're mitigating those excuses if you're going out there and getting the kid weapons after having 4/5 of your offensive line figured out. So I would be in on it just for that alone. But again, even if let's assume Rodgers isn't back for whatever reason, then I would say Lazard and Davante Adams are gone. And suddenly it's Garrett Wilson and absolutely nobody after that. So what is Tet McMillan, or what kind of player is Tet McMillan? He's a big outside receiver, 6'5", 210 pounds. I think that's a really good compliment to Garrett Wilson's game, as a not that he's like small in stature, but he's a little bit more of an elusive guy where McMillan is more of a power wide receiver. He can play outside as your prototypical X receiver. He can move inside as a power slot, something they wanted to do with Allen Lazard, but it didn't really work all that great. He's a very good route runner, especially for his size. Sometimes you think like, this guy, he's big, so he's not really a good route runner. He kind of just jumps up and catches the football. That's not the case. I think he can, run solid routes, get lost over the middle of the field, and beat zone that way, from what I've been able to see. He wins contested catches well. He's a good ball tracker down the field, so maybe a little bit of a deep ball threat there too. I think it would be a good pick, again, especially if the Jets don't bring back Davante Adams and move on from Allen Lazard. Wide receiver skyrockets up the board as a need. I also think they nailed the second-round pick with Tyleik Williams, an interior defensive lineman out of Ohio State. Do we really even have to say it? I'll say it anyway. Major need for the New York Jets. Interior defensive line, they have absolutely nothing after Quinnen Williams. Javon Kinlaw, I don't expect to be back. Solomon Thomas, I don't expect to be back. Outside of that, maybe have Leonard Taylor still around, and I like Leonard Taylor for depth. Really good story as a UDFA last year. Came in, played really well in the preseason. I thought he did okay in limited snaps in the regular season. Do I feel comfortable enough to go, the Jets are fine at interior defensive line with Leonard Taylor? He's going to start and play 65% of snaps, and then they'll find somebody off the street for IDL? I don't think that's the way to go. It's something that they need to address in the NFL draft. I would not be opposed to taking Mason Graham, an interior defensive lineman, in the first round in the top 10 for the New York Jets. But this is a very deep defensive line draft, and I think you could find an immediate impact player in the second round. And I think Williams is a talent where he could go in the late first round. That wouldn't be the thing that shocked me the most. But as we see every year, there's only 32 picks, and every year it feels like there's 40 players who are absolutely first rounders. And a lot of times talent falls into the second round, and the Jets have an early second round pick. And I think they could take advantage drafting a position of need. Tyleik Williams really fits that bill. 6'3", 327 pounds. But at that size, runs a 4.68 40. That's what he's been clocked at so far, which is 99th percentile speed for interior defensive linemen. He can win with power on the inside. He can win with speed on the inside. He's a versatile kind of pass rusher, but he's one of the better interior defensive linemen in this draft against the run. And I know stopping the run isn't necessarily sexy, right? Like, so much more fun to talk about, a wide receiver and a tight end and maybe a corner or an edge rusher or whatever. But you need to be able to stop the run. And that was such an issue for this Jets defense a year ago. Even when they were at their peak, they were great against the pass, but they still left a little bit to be desired as run stoppers. And I think a Williams and Williams duo up the middle would do wonders. Tyleik Williams and Quinnen Williams, I think, would be a very dominant force. And then add Quincy Williams in the row behind him, flying around, playing in a defense that is most likely going to blitz more in 2025 than they have in recent years gone by. Again, in this scenario, the Jets would tackle potentially two of their biggest needs. Yes, they still need a tight end. They will probably still need corner and safety help, but we don't know what they're doing in free agency too. And there's many ways the Jets can go in the first two rounds, so I get it. If someone says, you know what, I would rather them go insert position here in the first round, and then in the second round, interior defensive line's nice, but I'd rather a corner or a receiver or take a tight end at the top of the second round. Totally get it. But if the Jets came out of the 2025 draft with McMillan and Tyleik Williams as their first two picks, I think they're getting two immediate contributors, which is really important for this team. Let me know your thoughts on this scenario for the New York Jets. I'm Matt O'Leary, and I'll catch you next time.